Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 123rd episode. We're back to talk about another film. Niles, how have you been the last 2.5 weeks or so?
I feel great. I feel like it's been a good few weeks since our last episode. It's been, yeah, personally, chill, good, happy, and I'm counting my blessings for that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the world's on fire, and America's reputation's going down the toilet. But it is what it is. How are you, Dylan?
Yeah, kind of in the same boat. Personally, very good, but obviously, the world is a mess. Fuck ICE. Fuck Donald
Mm-hmm.
Trump. Fuck the American government.
Yep.
All of our allies are starting to team up with China because it's just better for them to do so. We
Yep.
are an unreliable ally at this point. So
I don't blame them. I do not blame them at all. This is it's
yeah.
been a long kind of like slow drain down the drain, spinning in kind of a vortex.
Yeah, I think it's like I don't know. I think the Gaza genocide kind of like revealed the ugly face of the West to
Hmm.
everyone, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been downhill ever since then. And then Trump came in and is just like such a repulsive fuckhead that everyone is like, enough. I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
fuck this.
Right.
Like, did you see the Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, at Davos this week?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so.
He basically came out and said on stage, it's like we always kind of knew the rules based international order and
Oh
the
yeah.
United Nations. Like we knew it was a bit of a sham, and we really only applied the rules to our enemies. But yeah, we kind of can't look the other way about it anymore. So
Yeah. We
like
really can't.
we can't. But enough about that for now.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about a movie. We like talking about movies.
We do. We love it.
Niles, what are we talking about this week?
This week we're talking about a very fun movie, a very fun topic: zombies. 28 years later, The Bone Temple. It is a direct sequel to 28 Years Later, and marks the fourth entry in the 28 Days franchise.
Yeah, the first direct sequel in the franchise as well.
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of unusual, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here. But we'll do non spoilers first, then we'll jump into spoilers, and we'll drop time codes for that as well. But Bone Temple is set in mainland Britain, similar to 28 Years Later. It is 28 years after the Rage virus laid waste to the UK. Bone Temple explores Spike's induction into Sir Jimmy Crystal's gang. Simultaneously, Dr. Kelson, who we met in the previous film as well, he forms an unlikely friendship and makes a startling scientific discovery about the Rage virus. It is directed by Nia DaCosta, written by Alex Garland. It stars Jack O'Connell, Alphie Williams, Ralph Fiennes, Lewis-Parry, and many others, for sure. Let's do some initial thoughts. Dylan, what are you?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts? What's your micro review?
So similar to the first 28 years later, I loved this. I've enjoyed all of them. I had never seen 28 Days Later or 28 Weeks Later until the release of the previous film when I watched them
Oh,
both for the first time leading up to that. I like all of them. I think they're all great. I know people like 28 Weeks Later a bit less, but honestly, I think they all have their charm isn't the right
mm-hmm.
word, but you know what I mean. But I think the 28 Years Later sub franchise is kind of my favorite iteration of this. It's just so thoughtful and uh, like contemplative, morose a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's yeah, it just really like makes me feel hope in a weird way. All of these do. I also was really happy to see a direct continuation of Spike's story and Dr. Kelson's stories from the last movie because I found them both really engaging characters, and the last one ends on a cliffhanger that a lot of people really did not like either, which is interesting.
Really?
Um,
Hmm.
well, it felt like I understand. Like, it feels like a very jarring tonal shift at the end, where Spike is like running away after this really somber adventure with his mom, and then a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of like blonde wigged British guys in tracksuits just like kick the shit out of a bunch of zombies. Like,
Yeah,
I understand why people didn't like it, but I
fair.
was very interested to see what the fuck that was about. Um, and on that note, like Jack O'Connell's Jimmy, Sir Jimmy Crystal, was a
Mm-hmm.
really great addition here and just a very fun performance to watch. But I had a great time with this. I'm looking forward to seeing how I think the 28 years trilogy comes to an end in the next one, if they do
Mm-hmm.
indeed get to make that. But I'll save the rest of it for spoilers. What about you? What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I like you. I love this. I really enjoy this franchise. Actually, in preparation for this, and partly afterwards, I watched all the movies, rewatched
Mm-hmm.
them. I've seen 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, so many times before this. But I was like, I need to rewatch 28 Years before we go into this. I was like, fuck
Mm-hmm.
it. Let's just watch all of them. And it's such a fun viewing experience, honestly, because all
Mm-hmm.
these films are so visually distinct, and just thematically distinct as well. And I think each entry in the franchise, no matter which movie you're talking about, I think they're all exceptional films.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they set a very high bar for this kind of Walking Dead zombie genre, just
Mm-hmm.
in terms of visuals, like the aesthetics. Every film looks so different. The storytelling, the world building, the originality. There's just so many cool things in these movies, and I think each film, uh, the director and the writer, they obviously had very clear visions on what they wanted to do, um,
Mm-hmm.
in each one. Like 28 Days Later, I feel like is kind of your classic apocalypse survival tale, kind of like Walking Dead or um,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It kind of starts in the same way that Rick's story does in The Walking Dead too, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
But I feel
waking up
like
after the outbreak.
exactly, you're in the hospital. It's like, what is going on? Like that's such a great way to kick off the story with
Mm-hmm.
Cillian Murphy's character in 28 Days Later. But then I feel like the movie, it just the visuals are very unique, like close-up shots, really quick like camera angles, and it's kind of got this grainy aesthetic to it
Mm-hmm.
too, like because they were using low budget cameras at the time and stuff, so you had to make do with what you could. But I think it adds to the quality of the movie. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
movie in general, it likes to it's exploring how humans change and show their true colors when society breaks down. Just
Mm-hmm.
great story. I think it's so fantastic. And then 28 Weeks Later, I think flips the classic zombie film setup by focusing more on like a recolonization effort,
Mm-hmm.
while blending in some great themes of like family and also hope for a cure, as well. But then I think,
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think 28 Weeks Later is so funny. Like, the recolonization is such a an interesting premise, and then obviously we get to see the start of a new outbreak. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
the entire movie, shit's gonna go wrong, and I just keep thinking, like, y'all could have waited a bit longer. Like,
Yeah.
it couldn't hurt to wait maybe a year, like a full year, maybe two, to
Yeah.
go back. Like, why take the chance? Why?
Right. They were just like, oh, half a year's good. We're going in. All the
Mm-hmm.
zombies are starved out, and they were
Yeah.
technically correct, but there they didn't expect everything. And then I think 28 years later, it goes in a completely different direction than the last two movies, and
Mm-hmm.
it feels like it's focusing more on this small island community that's just struggling to survive. But more than that, it's focusing on this relationship between a son and a mother, Spike's love for his mother and his journey to find a cure
Mm-hmm.
for her. Like that is the soul of that film, and it feels like a very personal, hopeful, but also very uh, depressing narrative in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just love that movie. I think the visuals are breathtaking. When I was just rewatching it the other day, I was like, why did I ever think that I should watch this on an airplane first? And then, like, this is a movie that you need to see the details
Mm-hmm.
on. And just like, it's breathtaking. The landscapes, the
Mm-hmm.
shots, cinematography is exceptional in that movie. And I think Bone Temple, again, it's a very unique, distinctive story in the zombie genre that continues Spike's story, but also branches out into more of this kind of, I think, religious and scientific themes without
Mm-hmm.
losing the insanity or chaos of their previous films. And I think this is just my very long-winded way of saying that I adore this franchise. I like all
Mm-hmm.
these films. I think they're kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to the zombie genre. And I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like a connoisseur of the zombie
Mm-hmm.
filmography. You know, I've watched some George A. Romero's and Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
watched The Walking Dead for years.
A long
Um,
time. Yeah.
yeah, and there's so many films that I still haven't even watched, like Train to Busan, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, there's just plenty to explore. But I feel like there's a lot to unpack in these films, especially the 28 Days Later franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would recommend Bone Temple in a heartbeat to people.
Yeah, I love this franchise because it's like each one, they all share an identity in a way, but each one is so distinct from
Mm-hmm.
the next. Like even the 2 28 years later films, which are probably the most similar of the four, it's like still very different from each other. Like the tone of Spike and his mom in the last one and Spike and his dad in the last one compared to like the Jimmy Crystal gang being front and center in this one. It's like it presents a very different feel and energy in each movie. So it's always nice when a franchise can be that fresh. And like thinking back to the Walking Dead, like I just think it's so funny how we ended up not like stopping watching The Walking Dead. I don't know if you remember. Like for the audience's sake, like we were roommates in this era, and the new season had started up. We just kind of we missed it because we were both busy with stuff, and then I remember walking out into the kitchen and being like, "Wait, we missed The Walking Dead. Do you want to catch up?" And then you were like, "Not really." And then we
Yeah.
just never
Oh.
watched it again. It just is
Well,
like
yeah.
it had gone downhill for a while at that point. It was, but
Yeah. Well, and it had like reached a point too, like we were post Rick v. Negan at that
mm-hmm,
point. Like, you know, they beat, I don't even remember the faction name, but like they outwitted Negan's clan and beat them. And
mm-hmm.
so like then they became kind of this ruling clan for the area. And I was like, I got what I needed out of the story at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
I don't really need any more. And you've killed off some characters that I wish you didn't kill off,
mm-hmm.
Carl. And it's like, okay, what am I watching this show for?
Right. I think we've talked about it on the show before, but like the one character they shouldn't have killed
They did.
was Carl. Like it's like he's the child. And it's like symbolically like oh the next generation, the hope for the future, and then they just kind of randomly. I think I don't remember how he died. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. But
it's
it's like
silly.
oh okay, well, fine. Do you want to do spoilers?
Yeah, let's dive into our spoiler discussion time,
All right, cool.
where we can really get into it. So, as alluded to at the start, we pick things back up with all of our characters from the previous movie, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll start with Dr. Kelson and talk about his plot line. And he returns in this movie. I really enjoyed him in 28 Years Later, and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed him here in Bone Temple. I think Dr. Kelson is a fantastic character. He's so nuanced, he's rich in details. And I think I just appreciate the way that Ralph Fiennes kind of plays this character too. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just like he's so matter of fact. He's like he understands the way the world works
Mm-hmm.
um, in his own kind of scientific doctory ways, and he's also like a romantic, you know, and because he built this whole temple for
Mm-hmm.
this purpose of memento mori. I just love this character. I think he's so complex and nuanced, and his storyline this time around is kind of more centered on this relationship with the infected alpha, Sampson, who we also met
Mm-hmm.
in the previous movie.
Yeah.
Um, Kelson discovers like he doesn't kill Sampson. He just like kind of shoots a morphine dart into him, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of calms him down and sedates him, and then that way they don't need to worry about him. But Sampson keeps coming back to Kelson because he wants more tranquilizers and medication to calm his mind. Kelson
Mm-hmm.
turns Sampson into a drug addict. Nice.
Yeah, I think what it was. This was such an interesting dynamic too, because it's established in the last movie. Samson is the alpha in
Yes.
just 28 years later, and when Spike meets Kelson, the way Kelson describes Samson is just like, oh, that's Samson. I see him around. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we keep to ourselves more or less. But it's like he talks about the infected in his area like they're just part of his community, like
Right.
he and we'll talk about that more in a little bit too, but it's like he sort of adapts to the new post outbreak world in a very like mature and healthy way, where he's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of trying to make the best of it, and then see things in a positive light, I think.
Definitely, he really does. And this is like I think this their interactions, Kelson and Sampson, it leads to this relationship that starts to bud over time. We don't see all the interactions, but we get
Mm-hmm.
enough context for it where Samson keeps coming back and back because he wants more drugs. He wants to kind of
Mm-hmm.
calm the rage in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to this point where they start to feel comfortable and safe in each other's presence. Like they both,
Mm-hmm.
in this movie, Kelson and Samson both get high together and just kind of like fall back into their highs and just like
Mm-hmm.
trust each other not to kill each other or do something to each other. And I that was a very interesting moment here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that was like Kelson testing the waters. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm trusting you enough to surrender my faculties for a moment, and if I wake up having survived this, then I know I'm making progress and I can keep going. With that was kind of because he like checked himself, you know, when he wakes up, he was like, well, I'm still here, so he's like,
Right.
because Memento Mori, like, remember you must die. He says at one point, like, he prepared for his death a long time ago, so he's like at peace with it if this doesn't work, and he ends up dying as a result.
Mm-hmm. His work's complete. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And then he has this moment in the film where he's having these interactions with Samson, and he has this moment where Samson speaks to him in kind of this drug induced stupor, but he
Mm-hmm.
says moon, and
Mm-hmm.
he kind of realizes that the rage virus acts kind of more like a veil over
Mm-hmm.
the mind rather than like a
Yeah.
mind destroyer. Like he realizes with the right combination of medicines, he could, in theory, lift that veil from Samson and help him rediscover his memories or his own
Mm-hmm.
humanity or something like that. And it turns out to work. We'll get more into it, but like Samson, he appears to be cured, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows for how long? At the end, when he
Right.
takes Kelson's
Mm-hmm.
body from the Bone Temple, and that, in and of itself, I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I think this plot line adds a really unique element to this, like, to a story in the zombie apocalypse
Mm-hmm.
genre. Like, the idea that you can sort of cure or at least treat the virus. The Walking Dead early on teased the possibility of a cure, but then they discovered that it's not possible, or they give up on it or something. I can't remember. Um, but I think this adds this really interesting element to the story, and there's a bit more of a moral quandary now when fighting the
Mm-hmm.
infected, because now we know that they still have their personhood within there somewhere. It's just being like covered and attacked by this virus, and like there's a possibility that any infected could regain their humanity, but at the same time there's not like a systemic means of producing and releasing this cure. So
Right.
like your average survivor on Britain like is not able to utilize it really. So it's like it doesn't change the dynamic for them if they even know it exists too. Like Kelson didn't really get to tell anybody about it, so unless Sampson has the wherewithal to spread the word, it's like it kind of dies with him. Um,
Right.
but I think Kelson's mission here too has a nice relationship with his role in the last film. Like last time, he's a doctor. He was a doctor
Mm-hmm.
pre-outbreak, and he's presented with a patient who's sick with cancer, something he was familiar with from before. It's a very, and I think that was one of the subversions of the last movie. It's like you're so focused in the zombie genre about death by infection, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just like almost don't even think about like, well, yeah, so people could just still get cancer. Like it's not like cancer went away. And
Right.
and the tragic part about it is, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong because you just rewatched it, but it's
Yeah.
like Kelson, doesn't he say that like the cancer she has would probably be treatable like pre-outbreak?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. Like the cancer had like metastasized
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point, but like yeah, he was like, I just don't have the
Right.
equipment. Basically,
Yeah.
like even if there was a cure for this, it doesn't exist today here.
Right. Maybe it was like I forget exactly what he said, but I think like he's like even pre-outbreak, this wouldn't be curable, but we would have caught it early enough to
Mm-hmm.
stop it or something like that. So like the cruel irony of it is it's a very non-zombie related condition that a medical doctor would be able to treat, but it's just due to the state of the world, the only thing he can do is ease her passing. And then in this one, he's presented with a condition that he would not have been familiar with pre-outbreak because it's just the rage virus, but he's thoughtful and through like careful study and research is able to find a solution that may like that if expanded upon could solve the problem entirely. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like a sort of like a medical redemption for him from one movie to the other.
true. Yeah, I like that observation. I'm not 100% confident that'll happen in the next movie, but who knows? Never say
Yeah, probably
never,
not.
you know. But like, cause like when I was watching 28 Weeks Later,
Mm-hmm.
those uh, the family, like the mother
Mm-hmm.
and like the two kids in that movie, they're basically immune to the
Mm-hmm.
virus, like, but they're
Right.
carriers for it.
Yes.
And they were like, well,
Mm-hmm.
there's potential here. And so the whole mission becomes, let's just get these kids out of here so that way they can like use their genetics to find a cure. And then it jump
Mm-hmm.
cuts to like 28 days later after they get out, and it's the virus is in France. Now it's in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I guess that didn't really work. So, but who knows
Yeah.
about that? Like, there's
Yeah.
two
Well,
different
because in
kinds of
that
cures.
one, the younger kid gets bit too, right? So he's
Yes, he
like
gets bit. Yeah.
he's
Mm-hmm.
immune, but he's a carrier, and so he's like the mom, and
Yes.
he probably spreads it in that way. But I think like Samson's situation is a little different because he's infected fully, but
Yes.
also he's cured in the sense that his mind is healed. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like he can't, like, unless it's a thing where it wears off over time, like getting bit or contaminated by the other infected doesn't return him back to that state because like
Yeah.
he gets bled on and bitten by all those other infected at one point, and he seems fine after that. So it's like
Yeah.
a almost like an evolution, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Well, yeah. Let's. Why don't we talk about Samson for a bit? Because like
Mm-hmm.
this was a great element to include in this movie. I thought he was just kind of going to be like a character in 28 years later, and that was it. But then they
Mm-hmm.
brought him back here, and we get to see Samson's perspective multiple times throughout this movie. And I really appreciated that. It's a perspective I never really even thought about within this series. And I'm so glad
Mm-hmm.
Alex Garland wrote this into the story because you see the visual through his eyes. He's like about to
Mm-hmm.
kill like this one random lonely traveler, and
Right.
he looks like a monster to him. Like the guy that he's about to kill looks like an infected. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
these you get to see it through his eyes that the infection has this psychiatric effect that distorts the way that they view the world. They view
Mm-hmm.
uninfected people as monsters or threats. So like their vision is literally changed, and
Mm-hmm.
this at least partially causes them to attack the uninfected. And I'm so glad that we got this addition to the story.
Yeah, I agree on all that. I think like the idea of diving into the perspective of one of the infected who's in the process of being healed too is super unique. Like, because we get back in his perspective when he's on like morphine and wandering around, and you get to sort of see his demeanor change as he starts to hear like the wind and the leaves and the birds. And then
Mm-hmm.
I loved the scene where he goes on the wrecked train and just kind of sits down, and his personhood just like returns. He
Mm-hmm.
remembers a memory from his childhood, and then but then that transformation like causes all of the infected to turn on him because he was the alpha, and now he's not that anymore. Like, he's a human being again. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a very spooky scene. Like, he comes out of the memory and they're all just looking at him.
Yeah.
But it's just such a unique idea to have a character who is in this genre always just a mindless antagonist.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a great addition to the story, something that you
Mm-hmm.
don't really see in other zombie infected type stories. So kudos to the writing
Mm-hmm.
team for including that. And
Yeah.
Sampson, I like Sampson. I think he's a fun character too.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's in the next one. We'll
Mm.
see.
Yeah, I feel like he's got to be. I think it would be odd if he does not turn up, based on how it ends. But
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Spike very briefly here.
mm-hmm.
Alphie Williams' character. He was the main character in 28 Years Later, and he's
Mm-hmm.
back this time again. But I feel like he kind of took more of a back seat in Bone Temple. I feel like this movie is more focused on Jimmy Crystal and Dr. Kelson and Sampson. That feels
Mm-hmm.
kind of like where they're focusing more of the story this time around, and I think it works pretty well because
Mm-hmm.
we still get to see Spike trying to grapple with this new environment, this new setting, and how to like associate with these people and survive.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fucking scared little kid the whole time. it's it's good.
Yeah, and yeah, because he didn't choose to be in this group. Obviously, he's just there out of survival because he was in a bad situation, and they saved him, and then kind of indoctrinated him into their little culture. But also, he's not buying into it, right?
Yeah.
And I love the part where they come across the Bone Temple, and they're all talking about how like, oh, Kelson's like, that's definitely old Nick, like we should go talk to him. And then
Mm-hmm.
Spike, knowing who he is, he's just trying to spare Kelson from them, basically. And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't do that. He's doing his best. He's just not really equipped to deal with these types of conflicts yet. But I feel like we're seeing him develop into a stronger, wiser character who's like learning how to deal with different situations. He's
Absolutely.
maturing over the course of the movies.
Yes, yes. Like the last movie, I think was like a Bildungsroman kind of coming of age tale for Spike,
Mm-hmm.
because he's literally on this journey to save his mom, and now this one is like, okay, you are of age, and now you got to literally survive. Like, there's no more
Mm-hmm.
like getting to this stage. You're past that stage, and now you need to
Yeah.
survive. And he's been indoctrinated into this satanic cult, which we'll get
Uh-huh.
to in just a little bit. But it's horrifying to, for lack of a better word, like what he
Mm-hmm.
has to do with all these people. And like, I think in 20 Years Later, I can't remember entirely, but I feel like Dr. Kelson gave a warning to Spike in a way of like the
Mm-hmm.
nefarious nature of survivors these days. I can't remember the exact line, but like, I think it's more of this warning that, the infected are no longer the main threat. It's other
Mm-hmm.
humans. Like, we can find ways to deal with the infected on our own, but it's like if you come across something that can think and act in
Mm-hmm.
very devious
Right.
ways, you're kind of screwed. And I think this is a very potent message, especially in Bone Temple, because I think, yeah, like we were saying, Spike sees this firsthand with the Jimmies fucking
Mm-hmm.
torturing, flaying, and killing this very small group of like gated cottage dweller community people.
Right. Yeah.
That was a terrifying scene.
Yeah, they flay them. It's pretty horrifying. And then the pregnant lady, like tries to fight back a little bit. Like, she uses that hook.
Yeah.
And just that was pretty gruesome. But yeah, it's like in the Jimmy gang, just they're doing this for no reason, really. Like they're just spreading, I guess, Satan's message across Britain,
Charity.
but
Yeah.
charity. But it's really, unnecessary. You don't need to do that.
Yeah. What are you getting out of this besides just the pleasure of killing someone? Like,
Right. Well, and it's like that's a big thing in zombie fiction too. It's like the real threat is the other people, like
exactly.
because the genre uses the fall of civilization to show like who do people become when all the rules are gone, and then examining different philosophies that exist today, and like what if we came into a society that believed in this thing and operated in this way, and they have the Walking Dead did this shit all the time too. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Well,
it's like,
I
oh my.
mean, the first 28 days later movie, like I think that did a pretty good job because like
Mm-hmm.
Cillian Murphy's character Jim, he runs across like uh, a dad and a daughter just trying to
Mm-hmm.
survive. They're trying to escape because they're running out of resources, and they're like the nicest, friendliest, greatest people you'll ever meet in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the third act of the movie, they meet the military men, and they
Mm-hmm.
are some of the most evil fucks you'll ever meet because they
Yeah.
just want the women
Mm-hmm.
for procreation. That's it. They don't. That's the only thing that they want, and it's logical, but it's fucked up. It's so gross. So yeah, you get
Yeah.
there's two people that you'll meet in the apocalypse. Very nice father who's just looking out for his daughter, and then
Mm-hmm.
the evil military commander who wants to steal your women.
Right. Well, and it's like playing with the idea too of the military guys were like they are the people who should be actively solving the problem and
Mm-hmm.
protecting the civilians, but they instead are abusing their power and taking like liberties with people.
Yep.
It's like it's an inversion. It's like, I mean, it's like Shane in The Walking Dead, right? He's supposed to be an off. It's funny about a cop, but like an officer of the law who protects people in theory, and then
Yes.
he becomes like this very violent, aggressive guy very quickly. and then
Mm-hmm.
and then you have like a character like Daryl, who's this, racist ass redneck who ends up being one of the paragons of this survivor group, and goes to Paris. Apparently.
I don't know. That's where it went.
Yeah, that's where the Daryl show takes place. He goes to Paris somehow.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
good
whatever.
for
That's
him.
fine.
Make
Yeah,
that
good for
money.
him. But let's move on to the we've talked around him a lot, but Sir Jimmy Crystal, the antagonist of the film, um, dive in. No.
Jack O'Connell, he is so good. So good at playing a villain. He was
Mm-hmm.
first this exceptional vampire in Sinners. Um, I hope he wins an award for that because it's so great. And now he's Jimmy Crystal in 28 Years Later. Kudos,
Mm-hmm.
Mama. I think he's so fantastic. He's got such a terrifying presence in this
Mm-hmm.
movie. And he really reminded me of a cult leader here in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty obvious in which ways, but he in the wake of this outbreak and kind of the rage virus laying waste to the mainland, he exploits the
Mm-hmm.
unexplained chaos of the world to amass this small following of loyalists and start to shape the world in his image or how he
Mm-hmm.
thinks things should be. He has no idea what caused the virus. He was a little kid when this happened, so he has no
Mm-hmm.
idea where it came from or that it is even a virus, and his followers probably have no clue either. So it's
Right.
kind of easy in a way to make up your own version of the truth, which is what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Even his father too kind of gave him a good um, start with that because he was the vicar of the church
Mm-hmm.
in 28 years later, and he kind of welcomed the infected like a biblical prophecy. He's like, this is the day of reckoning, it's like here. So it's like he has that implanted in him from a very young age on this very traumatic
Mm-hmm.
day. And Jimmy Crystal, he claims the virus was sent by the devil, old Nick, and that the infected are demons, and he thinks old Nick is speaking to him and instructing him to carry out his will on Earth. And he's
Mm-hmm.
got a little name for his band of loyalists and followers called the Fingers, kind of like the Fingers of the Devil. And that, I mean, just all the parallels with cult leaders here and Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
You could go on for days here because this is basically the same formula as most cult leaders. They'll identify some kind of terrible evil or problem in the world that's
Uh-huh.
affecting everybody except a chosen few,
Yep.
and they'll claim to have some kind of solution to that ailment. And they'll found their own little group or
Mm-hmm.
religion or some kind of belief system, and then they will manipulate their followers to do their bidding, and they'll exploit them in various ways. Uh, yeah,
Right.
he's a he's a
Yeah,
great cult
and
leader.
I think what's interesting too about him as a character is, like you said, he was a kid when this happened,
Yes.
and so I think he is like exploiting this idea to maintain power, but also I think there's some part of it that's a coping mechanism because, like you said, he doesn't understand. He doesn't have the context to understand what happened and why, and maybe he doesn't even fully understand what viruses are because he was
Mm-hmm.
pretty young when it happened, and so it's like it could be for him. It's like this is the only way he can make sense of the events that transpired, and he just rolls with it. It's like just so happens to benefit him as well, which he leans into.
Yeah, absolutely. Porque no los dos. Uh, and he definitely Jimmy Crystal. He views himself as like this messianic figure, as the
Mm-hmm.
son of Satan. But I think he's also over time been clearly corrupted and twisted. He wants to fix Britain with his own violent kind of ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have a vision, go for it. But this is the wrong kind of vision, Jimmy. And I also noticed something too on the rewatch.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things, it might be his first line. No, it's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
like one of his first lines in 28 Years Later. His father's getting turned into one of the infected, and he utters this line, "Father, why have you forsaken me?"
Yeah.
And like as his father runs off, becomes infected, and it kind of abandons him, leaves him in this world of evil. And then
Mm-hmm.
as an adult here at the end of Bone Temple, Jimmy has says the same line. I think it's his final line. He says, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" And it's after he's
Mm-hmm.
been crucified, and he thinks he sees the devil, who's actually Sampson, carry Dr. Kelson away from the Bone Temple, but he thinks it's
Right.
Satan. And I just really love that symmetry, and I think it speaks to like his distorted perception of the world
Mm-hmm.
and how yeah, he's just totally fucked in the head.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we may have already answered this question through our conversation, but do
Mm-hmm.
you think that uh, Jimmy Crystal actually believed he was the son of Satan, or was this kind of more of a long con scam like that cult leaders do to keep their followers following them?
Yeah, so we did kind of touch on it, but I think it is a bit of both, and maybe he's not even fully sure what he believes. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think it is a con that he uses to protect himself. Like, he's the leader of this group, so having them as followers kind of puts him in a position of power and a leg up above everybody else. He has like a posse of people who do his
Yes.
bidding, right? So it I think in that sense he's maybe he does believe that this was caused by old Nick, but the part about him being the like son and heir is just it's like, oh, he's elevated his own importance in this story so that he has some protection, right? um but the other way you could look at it is like maybe he has such resentment for his father for abandoning
Mm.
him that he thinks his dad, the vicar, was really like Satan on earth, right? So that's possible too. But I do
Mm-hmm.
think the part that makes me think it's at least partially a con is when he's not with the fingers, when he goes down and is just talking to Kelson, like his demeanor changes quite a bit. Um
Mm,
and
true.
like I think he does still mention that he thinks old Nick is his father, but you can kind of tell like he's operating in a different way. Um, and the thing that I think is the most interesting about it though is like, why does he choose to lie and say that yep, Kelson is old Nick, you know? Cuz
Mm-hmm.
that that inevitably is going to shatter his fiction, right? Or it puts him at risk of being exposed. Like he could have just said it's like no, that's just a guy. Like old Nick is elsewhere. Like he sort of pokes holes in his own story in order to say that Kelson is old Nick, and it makes me think that part of it is like part of him knows all of it's a sham and he just wanted someone to have a normal conversation with like person to person as peers because he can't have that with the fingers, right? He has to maintain this aloof nature where he's like always hearing the voices and relaying them. So I think he just there was a part of him that just wanted real human connection for a moment, even if it risked bringing his whole operation down.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. I
What
think it's
about you?
also like he wanted to like solidify his power and
Mm-hmm.
stranglehold on like the fingers, and so that's why he wanted to have like kind of the whole, song and dance with Dr.
Right.
Kelson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think Jimmy remembers Judgment Day,
Mm-hmm.
because he kind of talks with Kelson about it. He's like, "Yeah, I remember my mom and my dad, like sister, were killed," and he mentions his father, the vicar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but he remembers that day. He told him about what happened to them. But I think we're kind of on the same wavelength here, Dylan. I think that he's warped his own mind over the years through the lies he's told, and he starts to believe in his own charisma and charm and the lies that he's
Mm-hmm.
saying, and he just starts to believe, yeah, I am the son of the Antichrist, um, and maybe I am a little schizophrenic or something, but that's the voices. That's old Nick telling me what to do. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I love this character. I think Jimmy Crystal's fascinating.
Yeah, he's very fun to watch.
He's very fun. And yeah, there was something interesting that I saw online too. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but
Mm-hmm.
there's this fan theory online, and I've seen like an interview or two with Jack O'Connell now where he talked a little bit about it.
Mm-hmm.
That his character Jimmy Cristal is based, at least in some ways, on this English media personality and DJ called Jimmy Savile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Seville was
Savile, I
this
think.
Savile.
Yeah.
Thank you, Savile. Jimmy Savile. Savile.
Jimmy Savile.
Jimmy Savile. He was a big, 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 big TV star for a while. He had this
Mm-hmm.
very eccentric image. He's also got this very similar hairstyle, blonde hair,
Yeah.
just similar to like how Jimmy Cristal is. He was
Mm-hmm.
charitable. He hosted a lot of BBC shows. He kind of had this big image within Britain
Mm-hmm.
for many, many years. Um, he passed away in 2011. And then in 2012, literally like the next year, it was revealed that he was a prolific sexual abuser, so
Mm-hmm.
Savile, with hundreds of victims. What I could find online, it looked like there were at least 450 victims, many of whom were children at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
most were women. Heavy stuff.
Yes. Um. Yeah. I mean, that's awful. Obviously. And I wasn't familiar with him as a
Me neither.
figure, really. Like I'd heard the name, and in the time between 28 Years Later coming out and this one, like people have referred to it as like the Jimmy Savile Gang, and they were curious about how that's gonna come to fruition. I think though the fact that they dish out charity really indicates that yes, this is a deliberate homage to Jimmy Savile, and the they probably based their image in universe off of the real guy, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's totally true because in 28 years later setting, the infection took place, like the big outbreak
Mm-hmm.
epicenter. It happened way before this revelation in 2011 ever came out about Jimmy Savile. Savile, whatever. And so I think the character Jimmy in 28 Years Later,
Mm-hmm.
he had probably idolized Savile for some time, to some
Yeah.
extent, before the outbreak, because he's a
Mm-hmm.
notable figure on TV, probably looked up to him. And I think, yeah, to your point, I think his character and the Fingers are also kind of this twisted tribute or emulation of
Mm-hmm.
Savile. Um and it's crazy to think about that they kind of put that into this movie, like that visual connection there. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it really works because Saville, he was a beloved and charismatic character, this figure in Britain
Mm-hmm.
for many many years. He had unchecked power for so many years, and it was only revealed. Um, he was a monster. He was truly monstrous and
Yeah.
despicable. And I think Jimmy Crystal is similar. He's
Mm-hmm.
charismatic, he's charming, seemingly friendly until you quickly learn of his sinister nature.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, O'Connell, the actor, he mentioned in an interview that Jimmy likely models himself off of Seville, at least at least stylistically. Um, because he was on TV so much and he was so admired in Britain
Mm-hmm.
before the rage virus happened. But I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison or emulation. I think it's more visual aesthetics, and you can draw some correlations between how Jimmy acts and then real-world Jimmy too.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like an homage. He's
Yes.
paying homage to Jimmy Savile. Like his name to Jimmy Crystal, like it's probably not his real name, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably like a moniker that he adopted, and it sounds similar, Jimmy Savile, Jimmy Crystal. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same phonetics. So I can see
Exactly.
that.
So yeah, I think the visual connection is intentional and it makes sense for the character. And I think on a more on like a emotional level for Jimmy the character, like we mentioned earlier, he was
Mm-hmm.
obviously incredibly traumatized by the outbreak day, the abrupt loss of his entire family. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think in that situation, what I would do is try to find comfort in things that are familiar to me or fill me with happiness or remind me of a time when I was happy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where that correlation with Savelle comes in. He idolized him. He probably made him happy. And then, that's also why Jimmy in this movie, I think he references Teletubbies multiple
Mm-hmm.
times. We saw Teletubbies at the start of 28 Years Later. And it's like, okay, so those are those few things from his childhood that he's just like holding on to as much as he
Yeah.
can to kind of make himself happy and forget all
Mm-hmm.
this shit.
Right. Uh, yeah, and we have a dichotomy too in this movie about sort of goes beyond this, which we'll talk about in a second too, but like science and medicine versus destiny and divine sort of action, I guess, intervention.
I think it is pretty essential to the narrative, and understandably so when you get to know these characters pretty well. I mean, Dr. Kelson, I think he represents that scientific attitude, the mentality. He
Mm-hmm.
believes and he knows that the infection is caused by biology, a virus. This
Mm-hmm.
is he understands this. He's a doctor.
Right.
And Jimmy Crystal, on the other hand, is more of the theological attitude and mentality. He believes
Mm-hmm.
the infected are demons sent by Old Nick, most likely to punish Britain for the country's collective sins, or something along those lines. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of his whole deal.
Yeah, and his mentality, I think, also falls into like nihilism and embracing the darkness of his surroundings, and he sort of becomes like a disciple of Old Nick. Like he views this as like punishment being dealt out, and views himself as a delivery mechanism for that punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's like he doesn't, and we talked about Kelson earlier, like trying to have that positive impact, and in contrast, like Jimmy does not. Jimmy revels in the current state of things.
Absolutely, he does. And as the audience, going all the way back to 28 Days Later, we know for a fact 100% that Dr. Kelson is right in his assessment. We are very familiar with the lore of this franchise now. It came
Mm-hmm.
from chimpanzees that we fucked up with rage. And then the infection spread because some animal rights activists wanted to free them and didn't know what they were doing. So love that. Love that part of the
Uh-huh.
film, actually. I think that's such
Yeah.
a clever inclusion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then you can view it from Jimmy's perspective and his followers, and the religious angle starts to make a lot of sense. Like we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier, if you grew up in the quarantine era post outbreak and had no memory of what really came before,
Yeah.
then you would have no idea what caused the virus. You would have no idea of like what microbiology is, what germs
Right.
are. Like you'd be lucky to know how the water cycle works in like the environment, like what is condensation and how the
Mm-hmm.
solar system works. Like you would be lucky to have that knowledge in this post outbreak era.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like most scavengers and survivors in the mainland are probably not very educated at this point in the series. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of makes sense to blame the infection on the supernatural or unexplained reasons. Like I'm sure that they did that all the time in the Dark Ages and medieval eras.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say it's like technologically these people grew up comparably to medieval peasants, right? And that's what in the Middle Ages and in ancient civilizations before that, obviously, like they didn't have the scientific explanation for why why a tsunami happens or why
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens. It's like, well, the gods are angry, obviously. Like, what else could it be? And like on that note too, like they're using medieval weaponry a lot now in this era.
Yes.
Like they're using knives, swords, and bows. So it is like their world has regressed to sort of a medieval state of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it science versus religion is a good way to look at it. But I think it goes into two different like beyond that into two different philosophies on how to react to a changing world. Like Jimmy, as I talked about already, and you've talked about, like embraces the horror of it and
Mm-hmm.
adds to it in his own way. Where Kelson, in contrast, like tries to both retain the good that came from the previous world and also to leave a more positive mark on the new one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bone Temple itself, it's a memorial. It's a memorial, like he has a memorial to all those who died. He like treats it with respect. He has reverence for those people's lives and has a ritual to sort of honor them in their passing. He's also using his past as a doctor to treat the survivors he can and also research the infected and look for a cure for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just a much more thoughtful and caring person. Like it's because when trauma happens you can respond to it by sort of spiraling out of control like Jimmy does, or sort of, I mean, you got to cope and like deal with it in your own way, but then move beyond it and grow into something new. And that's what Kelson, I think, is trying to do.
I think you hit the nail square on the head there. That feels accurate to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I'd like to just briefly touch on as well
Mm-hmm.
is how 28 years later and Bone Temple have been kind of recontextualized for me after
Yeah.
rewatching the prequels to these 28
Mm-hmm.
days later and 28 weeks later. I'm glad I watched them,
Uh-huh.
but it starts to add some kind of nuance and complexity to the story here now 28
Mm-hmm.
years later, because at the end of the first movie, Cillian Murphy's movie, it ends with all the zombies basically beginning to starve to death.
Mm-hmm.
We see it in the streets, and 28 weeks later starts with a summary that it's like a text summary, and it just tells you like all infected have starved to death in the
Mm-hmm.
UK, so it's safe to recolonize. We know this for a fact. Like this is this is why we're going in at 28 weeks, because we
Uh-huh.
know it. They're starved. So it kind of only takes, on average, it seems like 2 to 3 months for the
Mm-hmm.
infected to fully starve to death. Um, so this kind of raises a question in my head. How is it possible that the UK is still quarantined 28 years later after the infection if all the infected can starve out this quickly? It's not like there's a ton roaming
Right.
around in these
Mm-hmm.
two movies right now, but they exist, and it feels unlikely to me that a lot of those zombies in the woods now are infected from like day one outbreak.
Right. Well, I think you already hit the nail on the head. There aren't a ton of them. I
Yes.
think the ones that there are like because there would have been an initial explosion of them when the outbreak first hits, right? And then most of them would have starved out over time. But a smallish amount of them would have been able to find food consistently, and there are enough survivors left who will get, caught and turned into food every now and then too. They probably evolved to eat animals also sometimes. And so I think it's like the reason the UK is still under the quarantine and like this is like, well, there aren't that many of them there. We could probably try another recolonization effort, but it didn't really go well last time. And
Right.
every time the military squad from Sweden, I think that was in the last
Hmm.
one, it's like they just get fucked up too. It's like so it's still dangerous enough because the infected are so fast. So it's like there are less of them. If you don't come across them, you'll probably be fine. But if you do come across them, like you're probably fucked. So it's just not worth it at this point. I think
True.
that's probably how it is. It's like the population of infected just sort of fell to a level where they could survive within the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it, and I think that's a logical answer to this question because yeah, I think you're right. There's you get to a point where it's like there's just this very small number of infected that are able
Mm-hmm.
to survive eating animals or scavenging, kind of like those slow lows mud crawler guys from
Mm-hmm.
28 years later, where they're just like eating worms and that's how they're surviving. Like
Right.
bare minimum sustenance, they're somehow getting by.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also had the thought that perhaps other countries like the US, maybe France, maybe not, have
Mm-hmm.
attempted multiple recolonization efforts over the years, kind of like they
Mm-hmm.
did in 28 Weeks Later, because it's like, okay, it didn't work that time, but this time we're going to get it right. And then something
Uh-huh.
gets fucked and it just leads to more infected on the island again. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of all three
Yeah.
answers. Uh, it also is kind of a moot point.
Right. I think it's like at this point in the first 28 years later, the Swedish guy says like it's fully quarantined, like there are military ships off the coast that will
Yep.
shoot anything. But it's like that would make sense even if there were multiple colonization efforts, right? Like, okay, we've tried this 5 times. It has failed 5 times. We're just we're just gonna lock it down.
let's
Let's
just let let's just not go there anymore. We don't need it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, there's on the rewatch of 28 Years Later, I noticed some other interesting elements that are scattered
Mm-hmm.
throughout. If you watch the movie closely, you can see Jimmy's arrivals hinted at several times throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's one time where they're going by a building and on the side there's graffiti and it says something like behold he is coming from the clouds or coming with
Mm-hmm.
the clouds, but he is crossed out and Jimmy's written in there instead, which I thought, okay, that's the Jimmy's.
Mm-hmm.
There's also that dangling infected corpse in the house that Spike and
Mm-hmm.
his dad find and they kill, but that kind of like stringing them up. Um, it's
Yeah.
kind of like the same execution technique that they were doing at the end of the movie, and then also to like some of those the cottage dwelling folk in
Mm-hmm.
this movie too. And that body
Right.
also had like symbols carved all over it, kind of like the members of the Fingers. So it's like, okay, that
Mm-hmm.
was the Fingers who did that.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just a few other things like the the Islanders. I don't know if you remember, but they kind of wore these, or at least one or two of them. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
why, but they wore this creepy mask on their
Mm-hmm.
face, and it kind of looks similar to the Fingers kids masks that they wear
Mm-hmm.
in Bone Temple. It's not a huge foreshadowing there, but uh, yeah. And then the movie also starts with Jimmy's perspective of the outbreak too, which we've talked a lot about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's Yeah, I want to rewatch the last one. So I think the masks you're onto something. Like there probably is a parallel between like the people on the island inflicting their will on the mainland in
Mm-hmm.
their own way, and then Jimmy sort of enforcing his vision onto the land as well. So it's like because
Mm.
I saw someone say like there's potentially a parallel between like colonialization with the people on the island being like a metaphor for Great Britain, like the British Empire, and they're caught like going out and taking resources from the rest of the
Ooh,
world to
yeah.
bring back. So it like the relate, and especially now in the context of like the infected are still alive and they can be healed in some way. So now we have a different layer to that relationship. I want to rewatch both of these thinking about that stuff, and I'm curious how it will play in the third one. Um, and we'll talk about the ending shortly, but I think there's the history that's being talked about in the ending. I feel like is worth noting and thinking about going into the third film to see how that plays into things.
Yes. Yes. That's a good observation. But before we get to the ending, I just want to
Mm-hmm.
say that Iron Maiden music video in this in this movie with Dr. Kelson, so cool,
Uh huh.
so awesome. I
Mm-hmm.
expected something like this, but I had no idea what to expect just because of the marketing. I'm like, oh, there's
Mm-hmm.
fire and everything, so there's some kind of satanic element here, but I had no idea that we were gonna get Ralph Fiennes doing an Iron Maiden music video. It's
Yeah,
so
I thought
cool.
that was really because he's just put in a situation. Jimmy's like, well, you have a problem now too, because I need them to think you're Satan, and if you don't pull this off, I'm gonna kill you. which,
Yeah, right.
which like would not solve Jimmy's problems in the long run either, for the record. Um, but yeah, so he just uses his record player and speakers to play 666, the number of the beast, and dances around and does pyrotechnics, and it's so funny and
it's
fun.
it's so much fun, so amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and he just goes all out. He commits to the bit. He commits to the pageantry. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so cool. The lip sync of the fucking year.
Yeah, it was great. And then he crucifies Jimmy at the
Yeah.
end when he realizes that Spike is there under the mask. He's like, okay, well, I gotta help Spike, and all of them die except the Kelly girl, who was kind of helping Spike
Hmm.
throughout a little bit, trying to keep him safe and make sure he doesn't step out of line in a way that gets himself hurt. Their relationship I thought was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to see more of it explored in the next movie, and I hope they make it. Um, because yeah, the movie ends with, you know, the Jimmys die. Jimmy Crystal gets crucified. Dr. Kelson's dead. Sampson takes his
Mm-hmm.
body away, and Spike and Jimmy Inc., who is Kelly, they leave the Bone Temple and go on their kind of own way through the mainland
Mm-hmm.
together. And the last time that we see them in this movie is them getting chased by infected down a hill, but off in the distance is Cillian Murphy's character Jim from 28 Days Later with his daughter. Um, and they're spotting them from a distance, and they decide we're going to go help those
Mm-hmm.
two kids.
Yeah,
Uh, I was not
and
expecting this ending.
yeah, I love the way they do it too, because the order of things is like we spend a few minutes with Killian Murphy and his
Yes.
daughter, and then the stories converge. But like, yeah, what did you think about it first before I dive into my thoughts on
Sure. I was not expecting it. I'm a little torn on it because I really like the ending to 28 Days Later, the
it?
first
Mm-hmm.
movie, because it's kind of an ambiguous cliffhanger. It's implied that uh, our protagonists might have been spotted by the military and
Mm-hmm.
may be saved, but it's not fully answered. Like, the final line of the movie is like, "Do you think they saw us this time?"
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked that ending because it was hopeful and happy either way, because it kind of allowed audiences to interpret it how they want. Either way, they
Mm-hmm.
get saved or they don't. They have their own little core little community. They're happy. They're safe. And I always kind of liked that. And now we do have more of a definitive ending here to that movie, because now it
Mm-hmm.
shows that they were not rescued and have lived in this kind of cottage area for over 20 years. And I don't love that we have that definitive ending now, but also I'm not I'm not opposed to it because I'm happy to see Cillian Murphy back as Jim. He's amazing in that first movies, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so um, yeah, fascinated to see how they're going to tie it all together.
Well, wait. Now that you mention it, it's interesting because they would have been there for 28 years, how
Hmm.
old was the kid in the first movie?
So the kid in the first movie, Hannah, I don't know how old she was. She was like a teenager.
Uh-huh.
She was kind of the white daughter of that British guy that they met. Her father died in that
Uh-huh.
movie, but Cillian Murphy's character Jim,
Mm-hmm.
uh, his love interest is Selena, who's
Mm-hmm.
the yeah, the other woman in that movie, uh, and it's clear that the daughter that they have here at the end in Bone Temple is their kid. But that kid looks like
Right.
she's like 18 or something.
Yeah, or a little bit younger. I was gonna say like middle school age, but I was just
Yeah,
thinking
maybe.
that like because I forgot that I for some reason when I was watching it I was like, oh, this is the girl from the first movie, but obviously not. The ages don't line up. So we are missing two characters from the first
Correct.
movie. We are
Correct.
missing the original little girl and the love interest character. So like,
Mm-hmm.
are they alive? If so,
Mm-hmm.
where are they? Because now that's very interesting. Um, but I like my thoughts on it were I knew Killian was going to be in this in a small role that had been reported on for a while that he would be in like a cameo in this one, and then if the first two do well enough financially, there will be a third one to wrap up the trilogy where he would play a major role. So
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting he would turn up at one point. I love the way they did it though, because they like showed the cabin from the end of the first movie and it's like, oh my god, yay.
Mm-hmm.
And then our characters from this movie like stumble into it. And it's like I'm excited to see them again. I think it will be a nice way to bring the franchise full circle to like if the next one is the end of the series, right? Like bring back some of the characters from the original movie. They interact with the new characters, and it sort of ties the franchise together in a more into a more unified whole. Like I think if that's how they plan on doing it, I think that would be a really nice finale. But
Agreed. And yeah, like to your point earlier too, I do want to rewatch this movie just so I can like study that end scene a little bit
mm-hmm,
because they're talking about history and they're
mm-hmm,
talking about he's like telling her like, oh, this is like why Germany had to like it was like post World War I discussion about like
yeah,
what happened in that era. And
mm-hmm,
I'd be interested to re-listen to that because I'm sure,
yeah.
to your point earlier, that there's some substance there.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was talking about specifically the after World War One and the conference at Versailles and the Treaty of Versailles. Like it was decided that it was the war was Germany's fault, and so Germany was going to have to pay reparations to all the other countries that were
Mm-hmm.
involved,
Right.
and then the Great Depression happened, and um, the Great Depression affected the entire world, but it affected Germany disproportionately because they were already on the hook for all this financial stuff, and it resulted in like those stories of people in Germany taking wheelbarrows full of cash to go get groceries because that's how much money it took to buy like a week's worth of food. And those horrible economic conditions are what led to the opportunity for the Nazis to come to power. Because,
Right.
like when an economy gets really bad, like people are looking for an answer for their suffering, and in come the fascists to tell them, I have the answer, and it's the Jews. And that's
Mm-hmm.
and so the argument Killian is making is that in the aftermath of conflict, punitive measures are worse in the long run because they lead to conditions that allow opportunists to come in. And he was talking about the Weimar Republic and how they were trying to navigate this. So I feel like
Mm.
I will be very interested in the third film to see if that is part of the theme of the next story somehow.
Yeah. I'm sure
So,
something like that will be.
mm-hmm. But any final thoughts on 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple?
No, I think I've said all I want to say on it, but I
All right.
would recommend it to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I big recommend for me. I really enjoyed it. And with that, let's transition into some other stuff. Niles, what have you been watching, reading, playing, whatever?
The main stuff that I've been watching have just been those rewatches of 28 days later, 28 weeks later,
Hmm.
and 28 years later, I just had a big old zombie binge this past weekend,
Hmm.
and I don't regret it at all. It was great. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's anything else really new with me on new things that I've watched. But what about you? What have you been up to, Dylan?
I finished 1984. Fucking bleak.
Mm,
It's
yep.
such a depressing ending. It gets very interesting at the end after the like abduction happens, and then they get released to go live
Right.
out for a little while. Um, Great book, I think. I think the one criticism I have of it, I guess, is like when 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 he's being told about the motivation for the party, the explanation being like, we do it because we can and because we want to do evil. I'm like, okay, sure, that's fine, I
Yeah.
guess. I like it's a little dated, I think. It's like I feel like there would be more motivation, even if it is just like maintenance of personal power. Which is
Yeah.
part of it in the book as well. But great book. I enjoyed those conversations in the back third a lot. Um,
Hmm.
I also after that I wanted to read something a little bit more lighthearted, so I read the like Critical Role Vox Machina Origins comic book. It was all
Mm.
right. It was fun enough. It's sort of like exploring the characters from their campaign and like how they first cross paths and their first mission or whatever. And I think the idea is the comic book just leads up to where the show started, um, which is
Right.
fun. And then this morning, I started reading a new Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle.
Mm.
I'm very early on into it. I'm not really sure what the central mystery is. Basically, they're looking for a person. I think it's just like tracking down a guy so far who thought he was being chased by law enforcement and dropped his Christmas goose and hat, and they are looking for him to return his
Mm.
stuff.
Okay.
So far, that's what it is. Also, been continuing on with this season of Fallout. I tried to watch this week's episode like too late last night, and I was really tired, so I need to rewatch that to get caught up because I definitely missed some stuff. But I love it. It's a little bit. It feels like there's less of a narrative kick this season, just a little bit, but the vibes are so on point and the characters are great. So it's like can't really complain. And they're in the New Vegas setting, which is a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
yeah. Also been watching The Pit. New episode is out tonight, which is great. So gonna watch that. Great show as always.
Hmm.
Um, and then on Sunday, actually watched the first episode of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the HBO
Ooh.
adaptation of George R. R. Martin's short stories about Dunk and Egg, and it's great. I think it's so far a fantastic adaptation, and if they nail the adaptation of these stories, I think it's going to be like really popular and really well liked amongst the Game of Thrones fandom. It's
I,
different
yeah.
different vibe a little bit. It's like 100 years before a Game of Thrones. Westeros is at peace, and you follow this like low level hedge knight and his squire across the
Hmm.
countryside as they go on different little adventures and stuff. It's great.
I want to watch it. I'm
Hmm.
gonna watch that. That looks like so much fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like it's as lighthearted as a story could be in the setting of Westeros, I
Yeah.
think. um,
Exactly.
And lastly, earlier this week, I went to a screening of David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, which I had never
Mm.
seen before. Fantastic movie, so weird and dreamlike, and like I remember. Have you seen it before?
I have not. No, I need
Okay.
to.
Initially when it ended, I'm not going to spoil it here, but it's like I was confused for a bit about what had happened, which is fine. But it was like making me emotionally like confused about what I should be feeling. But the more I started like thinking back on it, and then I was able to like piece some things together to figure out, and then in doing so I figured out it's like, oh, okay, I understand what happened and I know what I'm supposed to be feeling right now, and that was really enjoyable as well. But
Hmm.
I am like very familiar with David Lynch, the guy, and things he has
Yeah.
said, and I'm like familiar with his work, but I have not really watched much of his stuff, so that was really enjoyable to do. It's such a strange, ethereal movie.
I'll have to watch it because I'm in a similar boat where I know a lot about David Lynch and I've seen just a little bit of his work, like Twin
Mm-hmm.
Peaks. Love that show. I think it's so fun. But yeah, I've not seen like Blue Velvet. I've
Mm-hmm.
not seen Mulholland Drive. Yeah, there's lots of his work that I need to explore.
Yeah, I love that interview clip. Someone's interviewing him, and he says, "Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film." And they're like, "Elaborate," and they're like, "Elaborate on that," and he just says, "No."
Oh, what a kook.
Mm-hmm. R.I.P. David Lynch. But
So true.
all right. Well, that's gonna do it for us this week. We will be back in a couple weeks for another episode on something. We'll figure it out.
As
But
always, we'll figure it out. Yes, thank you so
yeah.
much for listening, watching, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
Until our next episode, Niles, where can people find you online?
You can always follow me here on this podcast, Play Pause Rewind, but you can also follow me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people find you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and like Niall said, you can find me, both of us, here at Play Pause Rewind, and on our second channel, Play Pause Rewind videos. All of that is linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.